Where are the Asoris, you ask? Let's dive right into it. Now, there's a few different ways we can approach this question. We could take it literally and ask, where are all of the Asoras right now in our physical reality? Or we could take it a little bit more philosophically and wonder why we don't see them anymore at all, or what happened to them. So, let's start with the literal question first. According to Hindu mythology, the Asuras lived in a place called Ashoka, which was situated in the southern region of India. Now, because we know that ancient texts aren't always entirely accurate when it comes to geography, there's not really a way for us to know exactly where Ashoka was located. So we can't really say for sure where the Asuras lived. They could have been living somewhere near the current-day Bangalore. Or they could have been living in the Western Ghats, or maybe somewhere else entirely. Now, if we were to do a little bit more digging into this idea of where Asuric civilization once stood, we might be able to find some archaeological evidence to help support this. But I haven't done that research myself yet. And even if we did find some sort of ruins that may have been Ashwasa, it still wouldn't necessarily mean that the Asuras are actually gone. After all, they were immortal, so they theoretically could still be alive. It's possible that they simply withdrew from society and chose to live in hiding somewhere, perhaps deep in the forests or up in the Himalayas. Ancient texts do mention that some Asuras did live in caves. So maybe they're still out there living a simple life away from all of us humans. However, there is one thing that we know for sure. The Asuras, as well as their allies, the Danavars, did live all over the world. So even if there was some sort of central location where most of them gathered, it's likely that some of them could be found pretty much anywhere. In fact, we know that the Asuras ruled over all of the natural elements, which would make sense considering that they were considered to be nature spirits. This means that there would have been Asuras everywhere, even in other dimensions and planes of existence. Some of the Asuras were even said to be incredibly powerful, like the 4 Kumaras, who were the sons of Brahma. They were so powerful that they were basically considered to be gods. I mean, the leader of the Asuras, Ravenna, was also considered to be a god by many people. He was feared and respected throughout all of the 3 worlds. So if these guys were so powerful and were essentially immortal, why don't we hear about them anymore? Why don't we ever see them? Why have they seemingly vanished from existence? Well, here's a few theories to consider. The first theory is that the Asuras are still out there, but they've just chosen to hide themselves from us. This is probably because they realized that humans weren't really good for them, and that it would probably be best if they just left us alone and we left them alone. Ancient texts tell stories of great Asura kings, like Mahabali, who ruled over humanity for long periods of time before being sent down to the underworld. Maybe, after experiencing life on Earth over and over again, the Asuras got tired of it. Maybe they saw that no matter how great of a king they were, they would eventually be replaced by another king, and that their time on Earth was always limited. So maybe they just decided to call it quits and disappeared. Another possibility is that the Asuras never really existed in the first place. Instead, they could have all been figments of the human imagination, kind of like fairies or leprechauns. Humans have always had a tendency to anthropomorphize nature, meaning we like to give human qualities to inanimate objects or natural phenomena. If a tree fell down during a storm, we might say that the wind was angry and came to punish the tree. If a river flooded, we might say that the water was angry and wanted to punish the people who lived nearby. When lightning struck a house and killed someone, we might say that the gods were angry and decided to strike that person down. Now, it's quite a stretch to go from saying that nature itself is angry to saying that there are actual deities controlling these natural events. But this is basically how many ancient cultures developed their religions. They took things that they couldn't explain and projected human characteristics onto them until eventually these things became full-blown gods. The Asuras themselves could have started off as benevolent nature spirits. Humans might have originally seen them as helpful beings who provided bountiful crops and healthy livestock. But as time went on, these helpful nature spirits could have become malevolent ones, causing storms and flooding and droughts and other disasters. Of course, any culture that worshipped these beings would have eventually written them off as evil demons. So the Asuras went from being helpful spirits to malevolent ones, and eventually to evil demons. They went from being revered as gods to being feared as villains. This process of deifying natural occurrences isn't exclusive to ancient cultures either. For example, some people today believe that Hurricane Katrina was a form of divine punishment for the city of New Orleans. People tend to look for meaning and purpose in everything that happens around them. So it makes sense that they would come up with gods to explain the things that they don't understand. There's also the possibility that the Asuras are actually extraterrestrials. It's entirely possible that ancient astronauts from another planet visited Earth and interacted with humans thousands of years ago. They may have taught humans things about technology or agriculture, or maybe even religion. And as time went on, the humans turned these extraterrestrial visitors into gods. I mean, when you think about it, a lot of the descriptions of the Asuras actually fit pretty well with what we think aliens might be like. They're said to have been very advanced, technologically speaking, and to have had incredible knowledge of the universe. They're also said to have been incredibly powerful and to have possessed supernatural abilities. Many of the abilities that are described in Hindu mythology, such as flying machines, weapons that can destroy entire cities, and the ability to control the minds of others, are things that we associate with advanced technology. It's entirely possible that the Asuras were actually aliens who had advanced technology that we can't even fathom. It's also worth mentioning that many of the descriptions of the Asuras are very similar to descriptions of other gods from other cultures. For example, the Nordic gods and the Greek gods are often described as having supernatural abilities and possessing advanced technology. It's entirely possible that these gods were all based on real people who came from another planet. Now, of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with believing in gods or aliens or anything else for that matter. However, it is important to remember that just because something is described in ancient texts doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. Many ancient texts are filled with stories of magic and the supernatural. However, just because these things are written down doesn't mean that they actually happened. It's important to keep an open mind when reading ancient texts and to be willing to question the validity of the claims made within them. And now we arrive at my favorite possibility, which is that the Asuras are actually humans who lived in ancient times. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that ancient humans were much more advanced than we give them credit for. For example, they built massive pyramids and temples without the use of modern technology. They also had sophisticated systems of mathematics and astronomy. They even had advanced medical techniques and performed complex surgeries. It's entirely possible that the Asuras were actually humans who lived in ancient times. Their advanced knowledge and abilities could have been mistaken for supernatural powers, and their sophisticated culture and technology could have been mistaken for magic. Over time, they may have been forgotten, or their achievements may have been lost due to the destruction of ancient texts and artifacts. But their legacy lives on in the myths and legends that have been passed down through generations. Maybe the Asuras were once a peaceful and harmonious race of people who lived in balance with nature. They may have been highly evolved and spiritually advanced. Or they may have possessed advanced technology that we can't even fathom. Whatever the case may be, the Asuras represent a time when humans were more connected to each other and to the natural world. They serve as a reminder that we are capable of great things when we live in harmony with each other and the environment around us. So where are the Asuras today? Maybe they're still out there living in secret, waiting for the time when humanity is ready to remember who they are and what they're capable of. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Decoding Hinduism. If you did, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.